So the Packers versus Broncos preseason game just ended, and it was one of the ugliest Packers games I've witnessed in my entire life. 27-2. Of course, it's preseason, so the score doesn't really matter. You just want to watch the different players, especially those guys who are battling it out at those different positions, fighting for roster spots. But there's honestly, like, when you look at this Packers team in this game, there are a few things here and there where there are some positives, but all in all, basically nothing happened for this Packers offense. A total of 80 passing yards. Michael Pratt and Sean Clifford both played here. The Packers, of course, rested 31 starters, so that sort of tells you, I mean, I think that could give you an indication as to why what happened tonight happened. But Michael Pratt and Sean Clifford both did not look good. Sean Clifford went 6 of 10 for 43 yards, 0 touchdowns, 1 interception, a 30 passer rating. Michael Pratt, 10 of 16, 52 yards, 3.3 yards per throw, I believe that is, and a 67.7 passer rating. He fumbled the ball. And last week, Sean Clifford was okay, didn't look really solid in my opinion. I thought Michael Pratt looked a lot more solid, competing for that number 2 Packers backup QB spot behind Jordan Love. But today, Michael Pratt didn't really look much better than Sean Clifford. I think they both just looked bad today. So when it comes to this quarterback battle, I don't think either guy took a step up. They both honestly took a step back, so I guess they're pretty much where they were before this game. I still think, in my opinion, as I've shared on this channel, that I just feel like Michael Pratt is a better QB. He just seems a little more polished to me, a little more comfortable in the pocket, and I just sort of like how he looks as a quarterback. And I think that, you look at Sean Clifford, who is still a year ahead of Michael Pratt being drafted last year. I think that Pratt could develop better. But the Packers' backup QBs right now, not looking good. Now, let's move to Bo Nix, because, of course, right now in the NFL, tons of rookie quarterbacks playing in the preseason. Everyone wants to know how they looked. Bo Nix did look really solid. 8 of 9, 80 yards, 1 touchdown, 140 passer rating. And here's the thing about this game that's really important is, as I said, the Packers rested 31 starters. The Broncos were playing their starters on offense and defense. And so while Bo Nix looked great, it was against second and third stringers. So I really just don't know how much you can take away from a quarterback beating up on backup players. It just, it's good that he played well if you're a Broncos fan and you're, trying to see what Bo Nix can do going forward this season. But I don't think it really gives you a clear indication of what it's actually going to be like when he faces actual starters. But good for him that he had a solid day there. Now, another thing for the Packers, we touched on the backup QB battle, which not much happened there tonight. Just was some bad quarterback play. If we look at the Packers running backs, of course, there is a competition, I think, for the second and third running back spots behind Josh Jacobs. And last week, I think Emmanuel Wilson looked better than A.J. Dillon. There weren't many blocks for A.J. Dillon, but Emmanuel Wilson showed some nice things running the ball, his explosiveness, those kinds of abilities. And tonight, interestingly enough, A.J. Dillon was one of those 32 starters not playing, and he does not have an injury. And so it seems like with the Packers resting lots of their starters who they are sure in being their guys they want to rest, A.J. Dillon was one of those guys, which would make it seem like he's probably going to make the Packers roster at running back. I think there was a chance that maybe he would be surpassed by Emmanuel Wilson. I still personally believe Emmanuel Wilson is a better runner of the football than A.J. Dillon. I think if you give those guys both a solid offensive line with holes in the running game, I think Emmanuel Wilson takes more advantage. I think he's a more explosive back, has some more giftedness in that area, in my opinion. But the Packers seem to have A.J. Dillon over Emmanuel Wilson still at this point, and so I just don't know if Wilson will ever push by Dillon because of what the Packers believe, even though personally I like Emmanuel Wilson a lot. He had an okay day, 13 carries for 41 yards, 3.2 yards a carry. And like last week where A.J. Dillon, there weren't a lot of running lanes for him. Early in the game for Emmanuel Wilson, there wasn't much running room. He had a 15-yard run later in the game when there was a little more space there. But all in all, this Packers offense didn't really do much here whatsoever. The other running back who had a few nice runs, maybe one nice run, Ellis Merriweather, 8 carries, 18 yards, 2.3 yards a carry. The Packers offensive line wasn't playing really great, and so that's that there. And now if we look at the receivers, last week one guy who really stood out was Grant Dubose, and I think he was, after that game, making a push for potentially being the Packers' 6th or 7th receiver, maybe battling with Malik Heath. Tonight, no one really had a game like a Grant Dubose had last week. No Packers offensive player really had a great game or was really that flashy. Malik Heath, I would say, was probably the best receiver tonight. He did lead 3 receptions, 22 yards, and there were 2 balls where he had his guy beat deep, and I know Sean Clifford overthrew one of them. I'm pretty sure Michael Pratt, if I'm remembering correctly, also overthrew him on one of those, and so he could have had a much bigger day if those passes would have been accurate. And so I would say it was a better day for Malik Heath, and I think he maybe was still fighting to keep that 6th spot away from Grant Dubose. But Grant Dubose, I still think, is a really good receiver, and Grant Dubose had a really nice tackle to end the game on special teams. And of course, when you're the 6th receiver, 7th receiver, 5th receiver, whatever it is, special teams is pretty important. You need to be impactful there. And so I think that's you got to give Grant Dubose some credit there for what he did on that special teams play. And now if we look at the Packers defensive players, Tyron Hopper, Packers rookie linebacker, led the team in tackles, had 11 total tackles. The next closest was Christian Welch. And there were a lot of plays there where Hopper, especially like in the running game, he just comes in, he plays hard, plays fast, plays really, really physical. I liked what we saw here from him. And considering he's a rookie, I think that he has a bright future ahead of him. Just a lot of splash plays, a lot of big physical plays. So if you look at the defense there, I'll probably say that was the guy who was the biggest standout for the Packers defense. And then the 2 points the Packers got was from a Zach Morton safety on, I'm pretty sure that's when Zach Wilson was in. And Zach Morton was recently added to the Packers. He probably is not going to make the roster. Maybe he makes the practice squad, but he got a safety there. It was a really, really nice play. And then if we look at the Packers kicker battle, which has been another thing to watch, there was only one kick attempted tonight, and it was Greg Joseph attempted a 47-yard field goal, missed it wide right. So the Packers kicker battle is continuing to be concerning because neither guy is really separating that much. I would say Joseph is maybe slightly ahead of Anders Carlson, but both have not been great in training camp. That's a position of concern for this Packers team. And so right now we're still going to... I'm curious to see who the Packers are going to pick because I don't think there's a clear winner right now. Both have been struggling. So that's not a great sign for the Packers right now. And then a few other notes, just looking at some notes here I took during the game. Brenton Cox had a really nice sack during that. Christian Welch had an interception after Mosby got pressure. Mosby's been having a lot of nice plays as well on defense. I think I already mentioned the Pratt fumble. And then, let's see, that's pretty much... Oh, Eric Wilson starting off the game at linebacker had a couple really nice tackles. And then looking at defense, Xavier McKinney, of course, is not playing at safety. Most defensive players weren't playing. Javon Bullard did start out there. He was actually playing slot corner to start the game, then moved back to safety. Evan Williams was starting out at safety with Anthony Johnson Jr. So the Packers continue to give Javon Bullard slot snaps, where he did play in Georgia a couple of years ago in the slot a lot. So it still seems like Keyshawn Nixon is probably the slot corner, but it looks like the Packers will probably try Bullard in some capacity during the season because they continue to give him those different kind of slot snaps. So all in all, as I said, just a very, very ugly game if you watch that. Nothing really happened all day for the Packers. The Broncos dominated. The Broncos also dominated at the joint practice. I made a video recapping that the other day if you want to see that. But that was the Packers starter. So the Broncos played really well against the Packers at the joint practice at this preseason game. But luckily for the Packers, they were resting 31 players. And so that's why I'm not worried. If they weren't resting 31 players and tonight happened, it'd be like, oh no, the season's over. What is happening here? But luckily, that's not the case. We did get to see what Sean Clifford would look like against a starting defense. He, of course, didn't have the Packers starting O-line or receivers, but it wasn't great. So not too much. Not too many positives tonight. If you guys want more Packers content, feel free to subscribe down below. I'll keep you guys up to date with videos later this week, and I'll see you guys next time.